This is the interview of Professor Emil Pasztor, taken at the occasion of the 9th European Congress on Neurosurgery in Moscow on June the 24th, 1991, for the archives of the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. Professor Pasztor, I wonder if you could commence by telling us something about your early education and childhood, perhaps. Were you born and raised in Budapest?
Yes, I was born in Budapest in 1926, quite a time ago.
Well, that's not so long.
And it was very interesting that I don't think that the air of Budapest is better now than 50 years ago. But as a small child, I had some trouble with my eye, conjunctivitis.
Yes.
You know? And therefore, it was proposed to my mother and father to take me out from Budapest. So I was 5 years old when we left Budapest, and we went to an outskirt. Today belonged to Budapest. And at that time, it is about 15 kilometers from Budapest. It was a big village. And I spent my first years there, and I got the elementary school there. But at that time, the system of education was so that 4 years elementary school, and then 8 years so-called gymnasium.
Yes.
Yes? This was the German system.
Yes.
So when I was 10, I started the gymnasium in Budapest. So every morning I went by train 20 minutes to Budapest, and in the afternoon back.
I see.
The gymnasium was a good one. The name was Saint Ladislaus Gymnasium. But it was not a private gymnasium. But anyhow, at that time, it is before the change of the system in Hungary, as you know.
Yes.
It was 36,
Yes.
by the way, when I started the gymnasium. And my parents, who were not rich people, my father was a baker. It's a baker, yes?
Yes.
But 4 or 5 years later, he accumulated. He was a very good specialist of bakery. Accumulated so much money that in the same place where we were living, he bought a bakery. And he was working with helpers and masters, you know. And then the financial situation, how to say, improved.
Yes.
So anyhow, they had to pay for the teaching in the gymnasium. Not so much because my results were quite good, you know.
This was a classical liberal education.
Yes.
Latin, Greek.
We learned 8 years Latin,
Yes.
6 years German, 4 years Italian.
No Greek?
No Greek, because it was gymnasium where they teach the Greek, it was the Latin, and it was some where 4 years Greek and 4 years Latin.
Yes, I see.
But in that gymnasium, as I mentioned, in the St. Ladislaus, it was 8 years Latin.
Did you have to take a competitive examination for entry into the gymnasium?
No.
I see.
It was not a competitive examination, but the result of the elementary school was important.
What year did you matriculate from the gymnasium?
With an excellent result.
When? When? Yes.
44.
Oh,
1944.
near the end of the war, then.
Yes. Yes.
Were you able to enter medical school then?
Yes. Yes.
Even with the
I
war
wa-
still going on.
Even with the wars, because the university closed somewhere in November
Yes.
only in Budapest, you know.
When did this?
In December, Christmas, 44, the Budapest was surrounded by the Russian army,
Yes.
Christmas 44.
Yes. So you commenced medical school in September 1944 in Budapest,
Yeah.
and then you mentioned that the Soviet army had surrounded Budapest by December,
Yes.
and then the city was liberated in March.
February.
In February, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Marshal Voroshilov, and then there was a temporary disruption in the medical school.
Yes, and we started the new university in April,
in April.
without any traffic in Budapest, you know.
Yes.
Walking, only ruins and no traffic, no tram, no buses, nothing.
Was the medical school damaged?
The laboratories were, some laboratories damaged. And it was very interesting that also internationally it was known that some important laboratories were damaged. Therefore, in 1948, the Danish Youth Association told that they have no currency this year to pay into the World Youth Association, but knowing this situation of laboratories, they invite 100 medical students in the summer to continue the laboratory work which was not possible at home.
Yes.
And I was lucky. I was among the
In
100 in Denmark, and we went to Aarhus,
Yes, I know where
Yes.
Aarhus is.
at the Aarhus University
Yes.
in the summer, and we used these laboratories.
I see.
And it was very important for my neurosurgical career later on,
Why is this?
because spending there the time, I heard that there is a very famous neurosurgeon, Professor Malmros,
Yes.
who is the man who wrote the first book, not the first article,
Yes.
but the first book about the lumbar disc. About the lumbar disc, what is the real cause of the
Sciatica.
sciatica? It was written in 33.
Oh, that's earlier than what
Yes.
in the United States then.
No, it was in the United States in 33. written.
33?
Yes.
Okay.
But the first monograph came out
I see.
by Malmros.
I see.
And and I thought that I was a student, medical student, and I thought that I was interested in neurology always from the beginning.
Why? How had you become interested first in medicine? What directed your interest to medicine first before neurology?
It is not so easy to answer. I know that it was fighting between my mother and father. Mother wanted that I would become a priest.
I see.
We are not Catholics. In Hungary, 65% of the population are Catholic, Roman Catholics.
Yes.
About 25% Protestant Calvinist.
Yes.
About 5% Lutheran. And then Jewish about 5 or 7% and so on. But we are Lutherans.
Oh.
And my mother was religious, and she always wanted that I would be later on a priest.
A Lutheran priest.
Lutheran,
Yes, yes.
Father wanted that to be a doctor, And my feeling was also mostly to the direction of a physician, to be a physician. But I was not, truly to say, honestly, I was not absolute against to be a priest.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have a younger brother.
A younger brother?
Yes, 2 years younger.
Did he become a priest?
No. He became, how to say, he finished the University of French and Hungarian, French language and Hungarian literature.
I see.
And he became a journalist.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the initial interest you developed in neurology prior to neurosurgery. Was that because of the period of time you spent in Denmark?
Yes. Yes, and then I went up to the neurosurgical department and I met for some seconds with Professor Malmros.
Yes.
And then later on, 20, 30 years later, it was a very interesting continuing of this.
What captured your interest in neurology? What was it that caught your imagination to develop this interest in neurology? Was it the professor himself, or was it his book? Or?
From the beginning, the first year, also today, in the first 2 years, we learned the anatomy and the physiology.
Yes.
And when I learned this, I came into contact mostly with the brain and spinal cord and nervous system, mostly than with the heart or the vascular or the bones or other things, you know. And then maybe this other meeting there with Professor Malmros, and so as a student later on, when I was in the 4th year, I went to work into the laboratory, histopathological laboratory of the neurological clinic
in Budapest.
In Budapest. So as a student, I made this work a little.
So after the summer of 1945, you were able to return and continue your studies at the Faculty of Medicine in Budapest.
Absolutely normally, and we, because it was shorter, the first semester, so we continued in the summer a little longer.
And was your education 6 years?
6 years, yes.
And then following that, is there an equivalent of an internship in Hungary? Or
No.
at that time?
No, it is the system that getting the diploma,
Yes.
you can go to the specialty to start where you want, you know. For example, today, it was that time a little other system, but nearly the same.
What did you
Today,
do?
5 years is the neurosurgery.
5.
Hmm?
Did you commence neurosurgical training right after you graduated from the Faculty of Medicine?
Just after, yes.
And at the University of Budapest?
At the University of Budapest, it was that time one department of neurosurgery inside the Budapest Semmelweis University Clinic.
I see.
The Budapest University has the name of Semmelweis. Yeah? And they started in Budapest the neurosurgery there in 49. I went to there 1950.
Who was the professor of neurosurgery at that time?
At that time, Professor Zoltan.
Was he the first?
Laszlo Zoltan.
Was he the first neurosurgeon in Hungary?
No.
Who had been the first?
They were two professors, not in Budapest, but in the country.
Mm-hmm.
One in Pécs,
Yes.
Környei, and one in Debrecen. But they started earlier, some years earlier.
I see. But the professor who was at the Semmelweis faculty, when you went to study, where had he learned, trained to be a neurosurgeon?
And before he was a general surgeon, but a very good one. And then he got a WHO stipendium for half a year to look around. And he went to Oliver Krona,
Oh, yes.
to Stockholm. He went to Germany to tennis. He went to England to see McKissock, and mostly in Europe in that time. But also earlier, before this time, he himself, knowing and looking somewhere in abroad something, he started some neurosurgery.
I see. So he, like many of the other early neurosurgeons, had their basic training in general surgery,
Yes.
and then developed
Yes.
subsequently their training in neurosurgery. You spent 5 years, complete 5 years in Budapest in neurosurgical training before you went abroad to London and to Norway.
No, I spent not in one this, because I got a possibility for a training. The surgery, what was interested me, not only surgery, and I'm a surgeon, and I was always a surgeon, but somehow to connect some other theoretical part, physiology.
Yes.
And that time, in the Burdenko Institute in Moscow, the physiology, the EEG, the electromyography, and other physiology was very strong. So I got a grant to come to Moscow.
What year was this now?
It was in 53, 1953. And I made a scientific work, and
In what
every
area?
half a year I went home naturally for
What
1-2 months.
What was the nature of the scientific work you did at the Burdinko?
What does it mean? What does the
What
nature?
type of research did you do at the Burdinko Institute when you came to
I did the surgery and the physiology together because the title of my dissertation was the rehabilitation of movements after the resection of benign extracerebral tumors from the motor region or around the motor region.
Yes.
So I selected people and operated people mostly with convexity or falx meningiomas in the precentral region with a paresis, hemiparesis before the operation. And I followed with EEG, with electromyography, with other special methods of movements, trainings, how the restoration of movements come after the operation.
I see.
So it was the...
When did you first go to London or Norway?
I went to Norway 64.
Much later than.
Much later. And then I was interested also in the physiology on the blood flow. And especially the time about the brain cooling.
Yes.
If you want to make a cooling of the brain surface, that you have to fight against the blood flow, yes, because the blood brings a lot of warmth to there.
Yes.
So it is very near to it, and at that time I was interested in this, and Professor Christiansen, who was in the Oleval Hospital in Norway, did some operations in cerebral cooling, in cooling of the hemisphere, you know.
Yes.
And I got a WHO stipendium for 3 months, but I spared the money and remained 6 months there because I was interested and I was not interested to spend money.
That was the first research that you had done on cerebral blood flow studies, and
You can say, and then privately, at that time, I went to the very famous Institute of Anatomy in Oslo. It was world famous. Brodal,
Yes,
Professor
Alf
Brodal
Brodal,
was the
yes.
Alf Brodal,
yes,
and Janssen,
yes,
the very famous professors. And then the physiology was very good there. Koda,
yes,
Professor Koda.
yes,
And Per Andersen came back that time from Australia, working there 4 years. And then, independently with this work in the clinic, I made some private work in this anatomy institute with the permission of the professor, cooling of the brain, and to follow the cortically evoked potentials, how it disappears at the core. And it was only not a big work, but Per Andersen was interested for it. So 2 years later, 3 years later, in 49, in 69, I was invited by Per Andersen, who is now one of the best neurophysiologists in the world, at least among the best 10, invited me, and for 2 months we did only animal stem and registering one cell activity.
oh, microelectrode.
Yes, because that time the Oslo Physiological Institute was on the top level.
Yes,
In 69, the technique was not the same as today, but anyhow, the registration was with photos
yes.
and so on.
Did you study
Not on
also?
tapes and others, but within a year, we published 2 very important, I think, important papers in the Acta Physiologica Scandinavica
Yes.
about the brain cooling.
You were doing the research primarily, though, on the brain stem at that time.
Yes, the brain stem, because it was easier, you know,
Yes,
the cooling there,
yes.
and
There were
the
some-
afferent.
You mentioned one
impulses.
neuroanatomist in Oslo who had done, wrote a very good long monograph on the thalamus.
Yes,
Forget his name.
Janssen.
Yes, Janssen.
Yes.
And then did you return to Budapest then, or did you go to London?
No, I returned in Budapest, and I, in Oslo, I learned the method, the hydrogen clearance method. Auckland, a Norwegian physiologist who spent 1 or 2 years, I don't know how much exactly, in the Bethesda in USA. And with
Seymour
Boyer
Kevin.
and Berliner, they worked out, Auckland, Boyer, Berliner, a new method of local blood flow measurement with the hydrogen inhalation method.
And then they would pick it up on how?
In the very important paper, they write the method and everything, but they investigated only heart muscle, and kidney.
I see.
And when I was there in Oslo, I met Auckland, and I told him, why not we try in the brain? So we tried, we did this, and it came out that it will work. So at the very first Blood Flow International meeting in Lund in, I think, 69, he went there to speak about. I was not able to go there. I have no money. I was working in Oslo, you know, and spared the money for it. And then when I went home, I continued this work.
Was this regional blood flow now?
Local.
Local.
You
How would
put a platinum electrode in,
Okay.
a platinum microelectrode,
Yes.
you know, and changing the concentration, you can measure the difference.
Now, when were you in London to study, to do research?
And I had this method, and in 71 or in 70, when I met in an international congress with Mr. Simon, I mentioned that I have this method and it would be better to improve and to make a research work and so. And he told when he get money for this kind of research, then he will invite, and it came out.
Yeah.
So in 72, 73, 1 year,
Yes.
I was working in the research lab of the Queen Square. Can we go?
In 1973, then, when you returned to Budapest, you continued your interest in research in cerebral blood flow studies?
Yes, but I was not so very active in this research later on, because at home the situation changed. I was quite active in surgery, and I became the vice director of this Budapest very big neurosurgical institute.
Was it independent now of the Faculty of Medicine?
From 54, it is independent, and from that time as a National Institute of Neurosurgery is working with 147 neurosurgical beds.
How many doctors would you train there? Say, each year, how many would you take in for training?
Each year, it's very not so easy to calculate. Average 1, 2, because we can train, not only we, but any other neurosurgical center in Budapest, when they have vacancy. When there is a vacancy, you can get young people.
Yes.
When there is no vacancy, maybe 1 year you can get
Yes.
not one.
And do they still spend 5 years in training then, similar
Yes,
to you?
yes.
Did they write a thesis?
It is not necessary, because the thesis is different. It is science.
I see.
They have to do the board examination,
Oh,
as everywhere in the world, after 5 years of training,
I see.
with a special system
How
of
many
teaching.
centers of neurosurgery are there in Budapest alone?
In Budapest we have 1 center, but in Hungary we have 7.
7.
Yes, all around. But
And-
all the other centers, they have 40, 50 beds. In Budapest we have other departments. Also in the Traumatological Institute there is a department. There is a army hospital for the Hungarian army. They have a neurosurgical department. A district hospital in Buda, they have a neurosurgical department.
At the Semmelweis faculty, Is there a separate neurosurgical
No,
department
no.
anymore?
We operate the
Not
patient.
since 1954 then.
No,
I see.
no.
What were
So
your
they send the patient to us
I
from the
see.
neurological clinic.
What were your main interests professionally in neurosurgery? Operating upon brain tumors or spinal lesions or aneurysms, arteriovenous malformations? Did you have any special?
In the beginning, I was interested mostly brain tumors, and from that time till now remained for me the pituitary.
I see.
I was with the others at the beginning very active in aneurysma surgery,
Yes.
but later on when I became the director of this institute in 75, I decided that only 4 or 5 people will operate aneurysma. And then we organized a team for it.
I see. So you
So these people operated in the last 50 years 2,000 aneurysmas.
So it's
Sacral.
similar to other institutes, similar to Berdinko, for example. You have a traumatology service. and
No.
You do not?
We have no different
No trauma.
services. We have trauma cases,
But it's
but
not divided
no,
up.
because we have only one day for trauma. We are open for trauma only one day in a week,
see.
Sunday.
But
Sorry.
there
On
is no vascular surgery section or an oncology surgery
No,
section?
there are no such sections,
I
but
see.
they are a team
I
who are
understand.
doing vascular operation
I understand.
mostly.
You mentioned transfemoidal surgery earlier before we commenced the interview. Was that did you study under Professor Guillot, or did you?
Yes, I do the same approach because
Did
I
you go
do
to
the
Paris to-
transnasal transfenoidal
Yes.
approach, not the sublabial,
Yes.
the transnasal transfenoidal,
Mhm.
and the patients are very satisfied.
Yes.
It's very important. We are now over 750
Mhm.
such operations.
Mhm. Do you use cyclosporin if the level of the prolactin level is not above, say?
Yes, but I have to tell you that the endocrinological treatment belongs to the endocrinologist,
Yes.
you know.
Mhm.
So they investigate the patient before,
And then they refer the patient. I
they
see.
get the patient
I see.
after a week.
And then you return them to endocrinology.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
And the other which I am interested, and I can say I was one of the activators of the transoral operations, which are mostly the clivus and the upper cervical vertebrae. And I think now it has now the place in the
Yes.
neurosurgical field.
Yes.
Not so excellent as we thought at the beginning, but for some is super.
Have you officially retired now as
No,
director?
not yet, but I should like.
You
in
should
the
like.
future. In the
You are-
not far future, because I have very good people who are able to continue, you know.
Uh-huh. What are your other interests?
And I don't want to go out from the institute so as a man without a paresis or so.
Yes,
To
I
go out
understand.
elegantly.
Yes, I
It's
understand.
important.
What other interests do you have other than neurosurgery? In music or in games,
Art,
sports?
art, and mostly the ceramic.
Oh, you do ceramics?
I don't do,
Oh,
but I am
you admire
interested.
them. Uh-huh. Do you have any hobbies?
This is my hobby.
I see. Uh-huh.
To look for it, to go to museums, to look,
I see. Mhm.
and I have a good library for ceramic and
I see.
porcelain, and many of my neurosurgical friends in the world,
Mhm.
and I am happy that I have many friends in
Yes.
the world. They know that I am interested.
Yes. You'd said before, again, the interview commenced, that you were hoping and praying that you only have 2 more days to serve as president of the European Federation of Neurosurgical Societies.
Yes.
And that you had served in this capacity for the past 4 years.
Yes. And it was very nice 4 years for me.
Well, it appeared from your address that much has happened in the growth of the European Federation in the past 4 years in particular. It's become a much larger...
have heard
Yes, sir.
my address.
Yes, sir. That it's grown considerably in size and diversification, and eventually may include a European-wide examination system.
Yes, this is what we are doing now.
And have affiliated societies in Middle East and in Africa.
Yes,
And,
yes.
Well, what do you plan to do in retirement? Do you plan to retire?
First of all, I should like to have a little gardening.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning with my wife, we decided never to buy any allotment, any weekend house, any summer house, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want to have fixed point where to go every weekend or every summer or something.
Yes.
Never. So when we were free, then we went where we wanted, in the country or in abroad.
Do you plan to write? Mm-hmm.
Just in December last year, we said that now this is the time that we are going in the age, slowly retiring, we must look for something. So we bought a small peasant house at the river side of the small river, and I think it will be nice.
Have you thought of writing your memoirs at all?
No.
You prefer not? Sometimes these are very interesting for younger doctors to read, which is one of the primary purposes of these archival video interviews.
Yes, but till now I did not think about it.
Well, perhaps now you will. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much,
very much.
Professor Pasztor.